Football's right around the corner. Get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. And with the NFL returning, DraftKings is giving new customers $200 in free bets instantly when you bet $1 or more on any football game. Listen up, because you don't want to miss this. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code ART19 to receive $200 in free bets when you place a $1 bet on any football game and get a free shot at $1 million top prize with your first deposit. That's promo code ART19 for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit and $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT.
The Nick Handley Show.
Hey, honey. Hey.
What the hell are you doing?
We're streaking.
Frank, get in the car.
Everybody's doing it.
Now.
Okay. Honey, do you think KFC's still open?
AM 590, ESPN Omaha.
All right, moving into the 5 o'clock hour on a Monday, the Nick Handley Show with TJ Henning. Appreciate you making us part of your afternoon. Join the sunshine. TJ, I'm looking at my phone. It says 91 degrees out. 91 degrees on April 26th. Mark it down. Now, Saturday, if you were wondering, for the spring game that kicks off at 1 p.m., that temperature, which TJ gave you earlier, but if you're just joining us, he's pretty darn nice too. 82 degrees under mostly sunny skies. Are you wondering about Friday? Are you maybe going to go out to Haymarket Park and watch the newly ranked, the 22nd ranked Nebraska baseball team in a very big series against Rutgers? Well, Friday, 73 degrees and sunny. Mm-hmm. And you can have up to 5,000 people at Haymarket Park now because Lancaster County increased the attendance allowance up to 75%. So up to 5,000 can now attend a Nebraska baseball game, and they still have 3 home series left. They've got Rutgers this weekend, then Northwestern in 2 weeks, and then the big one. It seems like all roads are leading to that final weekend in Lincoln to decide the Big Ten regular season champion. Should just say the Big Ten champion because there's no postseason tournament other than the NCAA tournament. So you've got that final weekend, Memorial Day weekend, which those are all noon games on, is that Thursday and Friday? No, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yep, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, noon. All at Haymarket Park.
Did you say a high of 82 for Saturday for spring game?
Yes.
Okay, I'm seeing that for some. I'm seeing a high of 88 for Saturday on my phone.
Oh, you know what? Silly me. I'm looking at Omaha. And we know as we get down south, albeit 50 miles, it can change. I'm showing 84 on Saturday.
That's what I had earlier, but it's gone up for me on my phone.
Okay.
So that's interesting.
I got 76 Friday and 84 Saturday and 84 on Sunday.
Yeah, I got 75 on Friday, but 88 on Saturday. 88 wearing a mask. That could be a little hot.
As long as it's not all that humid.
Yeah. Hopefully not.
Yeah. So that's nice, man. That's nice.
That's great.
Can already smell the grills right now. That's good stuff. So we led the show off today asking a question because this is a great week. I mean, we do not typically get the draft and Nebraska spring ball actually intersecting. But we do this year because Nebraska with a later spring game date. The draft, which gets underway on Thursday. In fact, as the spring game is happening Saturday, maybe that's where you hear a couple of Huskers.
Yeah. I was going to say, though, some people might be bummed that both are happening because they wish they didn't have to choose. But
yeah, I will admit, and this is, again, is why I love what the NFL has done. when it comes to the NFL draft. And that is, this is made for primetime TV event Thursday. You just put that all-important first round right there on Thursday, and then rounds 2 and 3 on Friday. Again, prime time, and those are obviously key rounds. And then as we get into the weekend, you know what? You kind of lose sight of everything going on because you got weekend fun, weekend chores. You may not be wanting to sit in front of the TV, and the NFL understands that. So they get the real big part of their draft in the primetime slots Thursday and Friday night. Because I remember when the draft used to take place on a Saturday. And you would probably watch like the first part of it, but it was a very long thing. And at some point, like, it's your weekend. You don't want to be stuck inside, especially the time of the year it is. It's in spring, man. You don't want to be stuck inside just watching that nonstop. Now, I know people who did and would still do it if that was their only option, but now there's so much more flexibility that I'm not trying to say rounds 4 through 7 don't matter, but you've already seen the money rounds and the rounds that people probably pay most attention to. And I would assume, TJ, that there was some type of research that went into this with an NFL fact-finding committee using the data of, okay, what part of the draft do people start tuning out? They probably got that information sometime between round 4 and obviously 7. All right, so why not do this? Let's go Thursday and Friday, put our first through third round in primetime coverage, and then on Saturday, we'll kick things off. People can get a little taste of it in the 4th round. If you're a diehard fan, you're going to watch it, follow it, whatever. I've got my ESPN notifications set, the push alerts to every draft pick that the Chicago Bears get. So I don't need to be in front of the TV to see them actually open up the envelope and announce who Chicago got. And then, of course, on Saturday, it starts going rapid fire. I mean, it's, you got, as they're trying to discuss the previous selection, there's like 2 selections. Like, okay, and while we were talking, the 49ers picked this and the Denver Broncos picked that. And, okay, we'll get some quick thoughts on that. Okay, and while we were talking, 3 other teams picked. So it's kind of hard to keep up with. So I appreciate that you have that going on Saturday. So when you're at Memorial Stadium on Saturday and you're watching the spring game, as long as you got your phone, guess what? You've got everything you need right there when it comes to the draft if you're still dialed into it.
Or probably what I'll be doing. 2 TVs in the living room. One on the spring game, BTN, the other on the NFL draft.
Yeah. Be doing that too. You could be doing that as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of, I think it's cool. It's really cool. And there's a lot of interest, obviously, in the NFL draft. And, of course, as it always is here in the state of Nebraska. I mean, there's always interest with the spring game, being on Saturday and having a chance to kind of see what this team looks like. So we asked the question with the 2 storylines, both local and national, draft national, Husker football local. If you could draft for a position, it would be an immediate upgrade, whether we say transfer portal or however you want to sort of label it. You can draft any position other than quarterback. Any position that you think would most impact Nebraska in a positive way. And we asked this question earlier, and the 2 positions that come up have been edge rusher, and that's where I start. I would lead with edge rusher, and then offensive line, tackle, or center. Those are the ones that have been brought up. And we did have someone bring up running back.
Yeah, that's actually where I might go for second.
Second, you'd go running back?
Yeah. Because remember when you could just go straight from Roy Halou to Rex Burkhead to Amir Abdullah?
Yeah.
I mean, all these just talented guys. And it's just, ever since Amir left, it just seems like, Nick, who has been the guy? And it's hard to find that guy right now.
Yeah, and again, if you're just joining us, my rationale behind edge rusher is you got to go back to Randy Gregory. I mean, that's, 10 years ago?
7 or 8, I think.
Yeah, it was Bo's last, 2 years.
I was thinking 2013.
Yeah, maybe. That's about right. So almost 10 years. But if I'm to look at what I think the strength of this team is right now, and again, I say think because things can change. Injuries, unfortunately, happen. Or, possibly you find a better solution in the transfer portal. I don't know. And I don't want to put these massive expectations on the defense, but given the fact that you're returning 9 starters, and it was a group that, for the most part, if you looked at their numbers and just use your eyeball test, this was a group that improved. Got a good secondary. Cam Taylor-Britt's a very good corner. I think one of the better corners you're going to see in the Big Ten. You got a good safety in Deontay Williams. You got some very promising defensive linemen, good group of linebackers, and a lot of guys with experience. Okay, so that seems to be the strongest part of your team, at least as of today. So you would naturally think, okay, well, we got defense taken care of. We got to solve the offense. Okay, but where do you go? Can you bring in a center or an offensive tackle that you know is the missing ingredient? Okay, well, if you do that, then are you confident in Adrian that he is a quarterback that is absolutely going to benefit with just that upgrade at whatever position on the offensive line you want to go with? Okay, to me, that's a question mark. Then if you say running back, well, all right, but are you confident with the offensive line that's in front of that running back? You know, the running back can be great and all, but if you're not getting the holes that you need, are you going to be that big of an impact? If you say wide receiver, again, it goes back, are you confident in the offensive line? Are you confident in the quarterback? So kind of around and around we go. So then it gets exhausting, and you can make really good arguments for all those positions. I'm not saying you can't. But for me, I keep it simple. I'm like, you know what? If I want to make the strength of the team even better, what's the one thing that I feel like they're missing? What could potentially be the difference of a good unit to a great unit? And so when I look at Nebraska, I say they still don't seem to have that proven edge rusher. A guy who can just wreak havoc, blow plays up in the backfield, harass the quarterback, make life easy on the secondary, create turnovers, create the field position game, set your offense up in great field position, get points on your own. Edge rusher. Give me a stud edge rusher, and let's go win some ball games with our defense. That's my rationale. Now, TJ, you had O-line, correct?
No, I had D-line.
Oh, you had D-line. That's right.
Same as
and
you.
You thought edge, or even, and you brought up a good point too, or a guy on the interior that just clogs everything up. You know, i.e. Ndamukong Suh. We saw how Jared Crick benefited from that. You start getting some very capable guys with one-on-one matchups, and then all of a sudden they're blowing things up. And I
Give
do
me
think
a Vince Wilfork.
Yes.
Warren Sapp, yeah.
And I think of Chicago Bears, Akeem Hicks. When Akeem Hicks is playing, it's noticeable. When he's out, that's when that defense struggles to stop the run. So especially when you're going up against teams that stop the run, I could see the value of an interior defensive lineman just having a stud that clogs everything up, and everyone else is just teeing off on the running game, and then eventually they're getting into the backfield, they're getting at the quarterback, and all of a sudden you have the same type of effect. So yeah, you could go edge or interior, just an absolute stud, and it's amazing what that can do for a defense, especially one that already has a lot of pieces in place. So yes, that's where I would go. You can continue to weigh in on this on Twitter at NickESPN590. If you want to chime in on the Limitless Male Medical Hotline, you can do so. But coming up next, we are going to talk some Chicago sports, the draft, the Sox, the Cubs, all coming up with Jordan Burnfield, our Chicago Sports Insider. Got the NFL draft coming up on Thursday. You know, my wife and I, we have vowed to get back to Chicago when it returns, when the draft returns to Chicago. We missed out on it. We were planning on going the second year, and we didn't see it. So hopefully he'll be back there. Some exciting things going on with Chicago White Sox as they are surging and nipping at TJ's Royals. Cubs, you know, hey, the Cubs, they still won a World Series back in 2016. They'll have that, and they'll be able to sit on that for a long time. As we go to the Limitless Male Medical Hotline, welcome in our Chicago Sports Insider, Jordan Burnfield. And first of all, congratulations are in order. A proud papa, Jordan. Congrats to you. How's everyone doing?
Everyone's doing great. Thank you. Very nice of you. And TJ was telling me how you had a little one come a few months ago.
Yes.
So you know how your schedule and your life changed, but it's been all good so far.
I was talking
really excited.
I was talking to somebody this weekend that they, I want to say they had their son about 2 months after we did, and we were comparing basically the first month story of the little pockets of sleep, and you're at one point wondering, is this my life? Is this it for the rest of my life? Huh? Okay.
Yeah, well, my daughter is just over 3 weeks old, but she already does know that during a lot of Cubs games, it's good nap time. So she's already figured that out, so that's good.
Oh, it's awesome. Congrats again, man. So
thank you.
On Thursday, and I said as a Bears fan, when I hear this, and I know the Bears are up, I can't even explain the emotions. And I wish one of the emotions, Jordan, was like just pure and utter excitement. But is it bad that it's kind of like, oh, God, what's coming?
No, I agree with you. By the way, by the time you hear that music, it will probably have been tweeted and spoiled by Schefter 10 minutes before. But that's besides the point. But no, I think honestly that's the question that you posed that everyone in Chicago is thinking, because really, there's this idea that maybe the Bears trade up from 20 and try to get a quarterback. But we've seen that movie before, and it didn't turn out very well. So, one thing that I think is unique about this particular draft for the Bears is that because Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy are still in their respective positions, it's hard to know what their draft strategy is going to be, because it's hard to know what kind of longevity either one of them will have with the franchise. So, I think that if you're looking in the long-term view of what the Bears should do, you could make, I guess, the argument that both in the long-term and the short-term, they should draft a quarterback because, obviously Andy Dalton is not a long-term answer, and, Nick Foles is we've seen is clearly not the answer. And so if those are your two quarterbacks, you're going into the year basically the same way you do every year as the Bears, where you don't have a good quarterback and you just hope to get lucky that your defense will create enough turnovers to win games. So, the one obvious caveat here is that based on everything we're hearing, there could be 5 quarterbacks gone by the time you get to 20. So do they even have the assets to trade to get into the top 10 to secure one of those quarterbacks? And could you even imagine if they trade up to get a quarterback and it turns out they picked the wrong one again?
Oh gosh, I mean, I was joking around saying Justin Fields would be on the board. They'd move up to 8. They'd take the Panthers spot, and they would take Kellen Mond from A&M. Like they would move up to get a second tier guy. It just seems so Chicago Bears. But Jordan, let me ask you this: is there? And I don't know if you're hearing this out there in Chicago. Is there still some type of hope that in the 2022 offseason that whole Russell Wilson story isn't over, and that the idea of maybe they could still be a big-time player? I mean, he named 4 teams, and now one's eliminated because Dallas and Dak came to an agreement. Now they've got a 1-in-3 chance to possibly get Russell Wilson, that maybe they stand pat on QB.
The one thing that I would tell you, Nick, is that story has kind of died off, and in Chicago. Now, if they could make it happen, that would be extraordinary. The one thing that I would say is I have a hard time believing that they could pull it off, because based on what has been reported about what the Bears were willing to offer, if the Seahawks weren't willing to take what the Bears were willing to offer, that was basically, they offered them the best possible deal, I think, that the franchise is capable of making. Yeah. The one thing that I would say, and I'm no fan of Ryan Pace or Matt Nagy, the Bears offered them everything they could offer. I mean, it was Mack, it was Hicks, it was, 3 first-round picks, it was, Virginia McCaskey's beach house. I mean, they were willing to offer literally everything they had to get Russell Wilson. So I can't really blame them for the fact that, the Seahawks didn't want to trade him, because that's what I would do if I were Seattle as well. Right. So I think the chances of Wilson are so remote at this point, I'd be shocked if they could make that happen.
Jordan, I'll say this, and again, this coming through just the lens of a Bears fan, and I actually praised Dallas a few years back for doing this. Look, I get it, first-round draft picks. I mean, you want the splash. You want the quarterback. You want the wide receiver. You want the guy that is just going to make plays for you. And Dallas, which typically is in the business of doing that in the first round, They resisted temptation, and Jerry Jones had to be talked down from Johnny Manziel, and then they went offensive line, and then they began the process of building what turned out to be a dang good offensive line for a couple of years. If the Bears stand pat, they go at number 20, and they identify a good offensive tackle, I got to say, as boring as that would be, especially to have a first-round draft pick back after missing out on the last couple of years because of the Khalil Mack deal, I'd be okay with that.
I agree with you. And Nick, you know what? You know what will happen, right? If they draft an offensive tackle who turns out to be really good, they will get annihilated the night of the draft, right? How could you do this? How could you draft this player even when we have all these other needs? Blah 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 blah. And then if the guy turns out to be good, in all likelihood, another general manager will inherit that player because it seems to be the reality. Like this draft to me is, and I'm not typically one who loves the NFL draft. I generally think it's like the most overhyped and boring sporting event of the year. But I think if you're a Bears fan, this is an interesting draft because you have people making decisions that may or may not have their jobs at the time that, these players realize whatever NFL potential they have. So I think, that's the big caveat with all of this. Like, how will this draft that Ryan Pace presides over affect the future of this franchise, knowing that Ryan Pace may not be here when these guys either become stars or don't?
Talking to Jordan Burnfield, Chicago Sports Insider here on AM 590. I do want to get some of your thoughts on the surging Chicago White Sox, but my last question about the draft and just the Chicago Bears organization right now. It was really weird when Ted Phillips and George McCaskey spoke to the media right after the season, and they were asked about the expiration date of the Ryan Pace contract, and they never really confirmed anything. You mentioned, and I totally agree, that this is a very weird situation having a lame duck GM and for all intents and purposes, a lame duck coach making the decisions that can impact a franchise for years to come. Are you hearing anything, or do you even see a scenario that could exist that they quietly extended Ryan Pace without making it public, so that maybe these guys are not necessarily making decisions to save their job?
Well, if they did, and no one has reported this, but if they did, I think there would be blue and orange pitchforks outside of Hallis Hall. I mean, it would not go well if that was the case. Just because, listen, the whole sort of prevailing thought at the beginning of all this was if Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy turned out to fail with regard to Mitch Trubisky, that they would not be here. And then we got that press conference that you referenced at the end of last season where they used the word collaborate 700 times and really collaborated in saying nothing about the future that anybody really resonated with, because Mitch Trubisky did fail here. He is no longer on the Bears. He is the backup quarterback for the Bills. And, they're now going into a season with a journeyman, decent backup quarterback as their projected starter. So, if they were to extend them, it would be mutiny also, because, when you look at what this defense was 3 years ago when they had the 12-4 year, the thought was that this was going to be the core of a defense that could keep them in the playoffs, and it just has not been. Yeah. They've been a solid defense, but it just never materialized. So if that ever came to light and we found out those guys got big extensions, then they better win in 2021, or there's going to be mutiny. Yeah,
I would agree with that. Jordan, the Chicago White Sox, it was kind of a slower start for them, but now we're seeing, they're on a heater right now. They've won their last four, and look, this is nothing against the Kansas City Royals. I think they're a great story, and they are off to a great start. And who knows? I mean, baseball's crazy. Maybe they can sustain this. But I think, are we starting to see the White Sox kind of look to form where they're kind of on the verge of maybe not only overtaking the division, and again, that's not to say anything bad against the Kansas City Royals, because my producer is staring daggers at me right now, but that they get that division, and that might be the part where they don't let go?
Yeah, I would think so. And, listen, TJ is great, and I hope for his his sake that the Royals can stay in this thing. We'll see. I mean, I would love it if they were good. I think it's good for baseball if the Royals are good, but I just don't know yet because I think, some of what we've seen might just be early season playing well. I think, one of the mistakes that I think we all make as baseball fans every year is we seem to make these grandiose declarations about baseball teams 3 weeks into 162, which mathematically never makes sense, right? But we seem to do that because it's all the data we have, and so we try to analyze it. And I think the White Sox, from a talent standpoint, should be the best team in this division, either them or the Twins. But I would say the White Sox, just based on the fact that from an offensive standpoint, they have a very deep lineup. Their pitching staff, I think, is the best in the division. And I really think that with the additions that they made to their bullpen, specifically getting Liam Hendricks on the back end, I think that they have the most, top to bottom deep team probably in the American League. So I would think over the course of 162, that's going to bear out. Now, obviously, injuries could derail things. You never know. Baseball is a long season. Funny things can happen, as you said. But I think that this White Sox team is awfully good. The one exception is I don't think anybody expected your mean Mercedes to be this overnight sensation. I don't know how long that's going to last, but I do think that they have enough offensive talent that even if Mercedes comes back to earth, so to speak, some of these other guys are going to be able to pick it up.
Yeah, and, I'm glad you bring up just, the current observation, just going off of what we've seen and still what is very small sample size considering the length of the season. Same thing about the Cubs. What have you kind of gathered about the Cubs, and what do you think ultimately is their ceiling in that division?
I think with the Cubs, it's a little bit more complex, and here's why, and I'll try to make this quick. I think that with the Cubs, the offseason was one where I think they wanted to rebuild, and they found out they couldn't because the players they had weren't worth what they thought that they would be, right? Like when you trade Yu Darvish to San Diego for Zach Davies and a bunch of teenagers, you're doing that, one, to clear $68 million, but two, in my opinion, you're doing that to kickstart a rebuilding effort. But then I think they went out in the market and realized we're not going to get the value that we want for Chris Bryant or Javi Baez or any of these other guys. So we can't rebuild. So we're going to go out there and try to be competitive because these guys are still under contract for one more season and see where it goes. That's why I think that they were willing to sign Jock Peterson for $7 million and some of the other small moves they made because they realized they couldn't rebuild. So I think that if they were to keep this exact roster or something close to it on the field for 162, they might win, somewhere between 78 and 84 games and be maybe in the mix for a second wild card, but not really be anything that's a real contender.
Yeah.
But I think that what could happen is if Chris Bryant, who when he's healthy is always really good. When he's not healthy, he has struggled. But, he looks like the Chris Bryant who's healthy and is going to be great. If he were to have a great season and then they end up trading him, same thing with Craig Kimbrell, who looks great again and has not in his Cubs career, but looks great right now. I guess my point is, if you trade some of these guys mid-season, they could completely plummet, and kickstart this rebuild that they couldn't over the past offseason. But as they're presently constructed, I think that they're a team that might be able to hang around 500, but I don't think they're much better than that.
Jordan Burnfield, Chicago Sports Insider. Jordan, really appreciate you spending time with us. All the best with you, the new addition to the family. It's awesome, man. Try to get some sleep, and we'll catch up soon.
Sounds good. By the way, are you guys sleeping now? I know you're a few months more into this. You are.
Yeah,
okay.
I would say, and I know people probably have differing views, sleep training was the best thing ever. I think we did it around, I'd say just before 3 months, we started sleep training, and we're putting him down no later than 9 p.m., and he gets us up no earlier than probably 6 a.m.
Oh, that's going to be amazing.
Yeah. And you'll be amazed that when 10 p.m. rolls around, how it feels like 1 a.m. You're like, I'm out. I'm done.
I know. We're becoming old men.
Yes.
What's happening.
There's no question, man. Any questions you have? Again, I'm very new to this. I'd be happy to give you any little pointers that have worked for us.
You got it. Thanks, Nick. I'll talk to you soon.
I appreciate it, Jordan. Jordan Burnfield, Chicago Sports Insider. When we come back, I want to take it back a little bit more to Nebraska baseball. Again, Will Bolt after the game yesterday. And again, Nebraska now on the National College Baseball radar. What do they need to do to just kind of block out all the noise and keep doing their thing? We will discuss. So a week ago, I was on these very airwaves. I was probably whining. I tend to do that. And I wasn't trying to say it's the end-all, be-all for Nebraska to get into the NCAA tournament, because it's not. You take 64 teams, obviously you don't have a top 64. I just felt like with the predetermined regionals that will be coming out, they'll be selected the first week of May, that if Nebraska had any shot at hosting, just being on top of the Big Ten standings might not be enough. That when making what is going to be a very difficult selection based on a resume, that the best way that I could describe it for the Big Ten and the MAAC would be inconclusive, because you don't have, as we've said many, many times, non-conference games to go off of or any type of conference tournament to go off of. So you need every little thing sort of in your corner if you are a team in the Big Ten that's looking to host. And I still think 3 schools have that opportunity in the Big Ten. Now, I don't think more than 2, if even 2, would get it. I think it's Nebraska, Michigan, and Indiana. And as I say that, and as it is right now, those are your top 3 teams in the Big Ten. Nebraska's a game and a half clear of both Indiana and Michigan, who are tied with the same win percentage at second. And there's still plenty of season left for any 3 of those teams to go on a heater. And the thing is, all 3 of those teams will be facing each other, starting with Nebraska and Indiana in a couple of weeks. So, again, there's going to be some more separation and more things to kind of find out about all these teams. But I felt like, okay, it's one thing to be on top of a Power 5 conference. It's one thing to have 20 wins and 7 losses. But there's something to be said about having a number next to you, a ranking from reputable baseball reporting groups like D1Baseball.com, like Baseball America. Having those publications with you in their top 25, you're getting national respect. We already know that Haymarket Park is a tremendous facility. It's hosted and successfully hosted many regionals when Nebraska was getting themselves in regionals. It's got a great testing situation there, too, with UNMC. They've gone through it. They've got the ability to have COVID when it comes to testing. Pretty much a smooth process there. You've got hotels around the area. So, everything, there's so many boxes that Nebraska checks. But the more boxes you can check, the more it becomes difficult to leave Nebraska out of that process. So that's why I think it is significant that today you see them in the rankings. Now, the question is, can they sustain that? We're going to find out. Will Bolt talking to Ben McLaughlin after yesterday's wild victory to win the series, the 7th straight series victory for this Nebraska baseball team.
I don't even know where to start with this one, I guess. Let's just start in the later innings. You get your leadoff guy on in the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th with a leadoff triple in there. Can't get him in, and then finally in the 12th you come through. I guess what's going through your mind there when you're just trying anything and everything against that kid to get somebody home?
Yeah, well, what's going through my head is we need to be a lot better at executing. But, the good news is that, we keep setting it up and you keep giving yourself opportunities. It was good to see us finish that thing off. It was an unbelievably crazy game. I haven't been a part of too many games like that. And, hey, at the end of the day, it's all about just finding a way to get it done.
Offensively, it's pretty obvious. We just didn't execute very well this weekend. But they didn't take it with them in the field, and you did execute when you needed to. Cam makes an unbelievable catch in left field. Jackson makes a huge throw, and just play after play defensively to keep you in it.
Yeah, and that's what I told the team. My takeaway was, I thought on the mound it was really good. Obviously, our bullpen did a nice job of kind of holding there. And then just the plays that Cam Chicks, the diving play going back to left center is one of the best catches I've ever seen in person, and that probably saved the game. That's probably a triple if it gets to the wall. What an amazing play right there. Hallmark, coming in with no fear and throwing a bullet strike right there obviously was a game changer, game saver. And Tomojo been sitting there, for 11, 12 innings, comes in, makes a great play to end the game, and it was just good to see. It was good to see us finish that thing off.
How was the mood throughout the game? I mean, you're up 6-0, and then they throw a guy out here who's just throwing BBs, and you just have a hard time getting the ball in play. What was the mood in here during all that?
Very up and down. I mean, you get off to a 6-0 lead, and we've seen our team just kind of run away with it at times. And we shot ourselves in the foot with free passes. I mean, just walks, hit by pitch, errors, you name it. I mean, that's how you let a team back in the game when you're up 6-0. I mean, we just creating some scenarios that, again, we don't see very often from this team. We saw it this weekend. I mean, we weren't very sharp at all. But we regrouped, we found a way, and we made the plays that we needed to make them. And again, you win series and you got a chance.
We were kind of chit-chatting before the game about Max. He gets 3 hits. He comes up in a big swing. Well, first gets a triple there to get himself in scoring position, then comes up with a big hit there. I think it was the first pitch that he swung at to kind of set the whole thing up. And then Efrain Cervantes, a kid that hadn't had a base hit since the first weekend. We kind of joke all the time, you don't look at the stats. You probably think that kid's a 200, 250 hitter with the way he's been swinging it. What'd you think of those kids coming through in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, Max it's amazing. When we DH him, he hits about 500. He took some great swings today, and against a really good pitcher, taking a really mature approach and hitting the ball off the wall for a triple. And we weren't able to cash in behind that, but he got the big hit to give us the lead there, just ready to hit with a runner at third, less than 2 outs. And then, like you said, Efrain, the kid is such a great teammate, a humble, hard worker, and he's a good hitter. I mean, his numbers don't say that, but if you look to the walk to strike out, and usually gives you a pretty good at-bat, and he just hasn't had a lot of balls find a hole. It was good to see him find a hole there in a huge spot. That was the difference in the game. Obviously, the 1 run would have felt good, but the 2-run single right there, that iced it.
I know this has gone on a while, but there's a lot to unpack here. Got to ask you about Schwellenbach. 4 innings for him. Probably hard to take the ball from him in that situation, pitching his home state. What were the conversations there? I think he threw just over 60 today.
Yeah, I mean, it was at 47 there after 3, and he said, it's my game to win or lose. And we were going to keep a close eye on it. He hasn't thrown that much. We've been wanting to stretch him out. We had the luxury of not having used him this weekend also, and he really didn't even warm up this weekend at all in the bullpen, Friday and Saturday's game. So it's good to see him stretch out a little bit. I didn't think he had his best stuff necessarily today, but we turn a big double play behind him. Obviously threw the guy out at the plate, and he made pitches when he needed to.
Again, Will Bolt talking to Ben McLaughlin after yesterday's crazy win for the Huskers. They won 9-6. They win that series, and again, that is 7 straight Big Ten series Nebraska has won. And again, a game and a half up in the Big Ten standings with a top 25 ranking to show for it. All right, we'll come back to what's on tap next. A big thanks to our guests on the show today, Mike Babcock of HailVarsity.com, Brian Christopherson of Husker 24/7 Sports, Ben Stevens of the Locked On Big Ten podcast, and Jordan Burnfield, our Chicago Sports Insider. If you missed any of the show, check out the podcast on the AM 590 Omaha app, where you can catch the show live, podcasts, and all of the Huskers sporting events right there. Tap that app, AM 590 Omaha app. Easy to find, and it's free. That's the best part of it. All right, Tej, what do we got on tap for your Monday?
Yeah, you've got an NBA doubleheader on NBA TV at 6:30. Phoenix taking on the Knicks. And then at 9 o'clock, you have Dallas taking on the Kings. Major League Baseball right now on ESPN+. You have Minnesota taking on Cleveland. Your Indians trail right now, Nick, at the end of 3.
I know. I was watching it.
At 6 on ESPN, you have the Cubs taking on the Atlanta Braves. And then in the NHL world tonight, NBC Sports Network at 6:30, you have Carolina taking on Dallas. And then 2 games on ESPN+. At 8 o'clock, Edmonton taking on Winnipeg. And 9 o'clock, Anaheim taking on LA.
Started to watch the documentary on the Operation Varsity Blues, the college admissions scandal. It's not a series. It's actually like an hour, 40-minute documentary.
Okay.
So it's not a series, but we got about halfway through it and got a little tired. But that's not because it was boring. It's just because we were tired. But it's very good so far. So I think I'm going to give that a whirl as well. I would highly recommend it. So far, from what I've seen.
Okay, cool. I watched the So-So documentary last night on HBO Max, The Day the Sports World Stood Still.
Yes.
It was executive produced by Chris Paul, just kind of talking about the bubble life and then that fateful night when the sports world did stop. So yeah, it was okay.
Always interesting stuff. All right, Sports Nightly coming up next. Stay with AM 590. TJ and I are back with you tomorrow starting at 2 o'clock here on The Nick Handley Show. Good night, everyone.